Hi everyone, welcome back to the Pro MMA Betting Podcast. So we're going to break down UFC 264. It's the rubber match between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor. So any Conor McGregor card, always a mega event. It's the first show back in Vegas with a crowd as well. So hopefully the signs are looking good for getting back to having a live crowd. I think Dana said that he's going to stick with the Apex for the rest of this year, but hopefully we'll get a number of shows with a crowd between now and the end of the year, and then hopefully start getting back to normality from next year. But mega show this week. I'm going to start trying to do this pod, guys, every Monday from now on. That's out nice and early. For new listeners, just a reminder, this is a betting prediction podcast. We do look at the odds. We look at whether we feel there's value on particular odds. We look at implied probability. It is more inclined towards your bettor as opposed to someone that's just watching the fights as a fan. I will general rule of thumb, so it isn't set in stone, but I generally will pick on this podcast the fighter who I feel has the value. And I mean, if you go back and look at some of the more recent pods, we've called a high percentage of the underdogs. Underdogs have been hitting a lot recently. I've called it on each of the pods. I've said these are underdog heavy shows, and the underdogs have been coming through. This particular card, I haven't actually analysed it in my head as to whether I feel it's dog heavy or not, but we'll work that out as we go through. I've got a feeling I don't think this is such a dog heavy card, but I could be wrong now. I've not actually thought about it, but we'll look at that as we get towards the end and where the predictions have gone. As always, we'll break down the fights from bottom to top, and as I've already said, looking at them from a betting perspective. I do offer a premium service where guys can sign up for weekly, monthly, 6-monthly or yearly packages. All of our bets are tracked. If you go onto the website prommabetting.com, on the homepage you'll see free images, one to betmma.tips, or free icons that'll take you to betmma.tips, direct link to our tracker there, and then there's two links to betting.gs. There's two because one is for live betting only, because we offer a pre and live betting service to members, and the other one is for boxing plays, or perhaps if there's a double across the UFC and boxing, things that basically can't be recorded on betmma.tips. And occasionally I do forget to log my pick on betmma.tips, so I end up putting it on betting.gs. Most recent example was one of the Cage Warriors fights. So I went to log it, but the event had already started, so the guy won't let you log a tip if the event's already started, so I had to put it on betting.gs. But everything is transparent, guys, everything tracked across 3 years. Members are up, if you use £100 per unit, around £28,000. We have a Discord channel, private Discord channel, which is where we communicate, or I communicate, the live betting tips during shows. It's paused during the fights, so no one else can contribute. And otherwise, it's turned into a little bit of a community where the guys will discuss the fights, etc. So we will jump in now. We'll have a look at the card from bottom to top. Let's see what we're thinking in terms of how the dog's going to be barking on this particular card. First fight on the card, I can tell you I'm not going into detail on it. I haven't even looked at it. It's the middleweight fight between Akhmedov versus Hu Yaozong. Hugh hasn't fought in like 3 years. He's quite young. Who knows how he's going to look? The lines come down to it's almost a pick 'em now. It's just who knows how this fight's going to look. So it's a pass. I'm not even making a prediction on it. Next fight, we've got Zhalgas Zhumagulov taking on Jerome Rivera. So Jerome hasn't looked good in the UFC. Let's be brutally honest. He's 0-3, knocked out by Tyson Nam, and last fight owed Osborne, and sandwiched in between a decision loss to Francisco Figueiredo. Zhumagulov could probably call himself a little bit unlucky not to have won his UFC debut against Paiva. I actually had a pre-bet on Paiva there, and I thought Zhumagulov deserved that decision. But he's coming off a loss to Amir Albazi. Amir looked good in that fight. I was quite surprised that it was Amir that was actually the one pressuring Zhumagulov, and did mix in his grappling, but he was outstriking him as well. So it showed what a promising talent Albazi is. But I mean, you have to favour Zhumagulov here, but odds-wise, there's no value on it. There's no way I'm laying. I think he's about minus 350. Let's have a quick look, see if that's changed. Higher than that, he's minus 375, minus 400 at one book. I'm not laying that on Zumagulov. If we're going to find any value on this fight, it would have to be a prop. Zumagulov, he hasn't really been finishing people in the last 5 years either. He's been going to a lot of decisions, albeit he has been facing a high level of competition, to be fair to him. Adi Bagatinov, Tagir Ulanbekov, Tyson Nam, who's very durable, and the aforementioned Albazian, Paiva, and he's had a couple of other fights against decent fighters as well. So I don't want to just outright dismiss his finishing ability, and it is concerning that at flyweight, Rivera's been finished twice in the UFC. So in terms of props, over 2.5, minus 225. Fight goes to decision, minus 200. I don't even want to lay that, to be honest. I just don't trust Rivera. It wouldn't shock me if he got finished again. Zumagulov inside the distance. I mean, varies. One book's got plus 200 according to BFO, which is Betway. But then if you look at the other books that do have props, not everyone's released them yet, you're looking at plus 275, plus 300 for Zumagulov inside the distance. I probably won't bet it because it is flyweight, but if I was going to have a flutter on it, I'd probably have a little sprinkle on Zumagulov winning inside the distance, but it would be small. Pereira's going to try and fight long here. He's in a big cage. As we've got the crowd, we're not at the apex. He's going to try and probably skirt the fence. Zumagulov might catch up with him like Tyson Nam did, but I mean, likelihood is it goes to a decision, but at those odds, I think you've got to look at the inside the distance prop, if anything, but it's pass fight for me. Next, middleweight fight, we've got Omari Akhmedov taking on Brad Tavares. So Omari Akhmedov, bit of a boxer wrestler type style. Moved up from welterweight, he's gone 4-1-1 since moving up to middleweight. He's taking on Brad Tavares here, who's a vet, been in the UFC I think over 10 years now. Brad had some injury problems, so he's not been as active as he would have liked. Talented guy, very athletic. I think this fight is going to play out on the feet. I don't think Omari is going to be able to get Brad down. He's got tremendous takedown defence, and even if he can get him down early, maybe once or twice, I think Brad will pop back up to his feet. He's a very athletic guy, very good takedown defence, very well trained. So I think it will play out on the feet. Brad is definitely the better technical striker. Omari, perhaps the raw power advantage. Problem Omari has though is he definitely does crack. You can see it in fights with Ian Heinisch. You see him, he makes Ian very tentative in that fight when he cracks him a couple of times. You can even see it in the Marvin Vettori fight. Marvin backing up basically at first. He definitely has power, but what he does have is an inability to finish, and I think that's probably due to his lack of technicality on the feet. He's only finished in the UFC from strikes. It was his UFC, I think it was his UFC debut down at welterweight when it was an all-out brawl against Perpetuo back in 2013. I know he got the Brian Ebersol win, but that was a knee injury. It's not a KO win per se. And since then, it's just been decision. He's struggled to put people away. I mean, we have seen Brad put away. I remember I bet Brad against Tim Boach many years ago now, and Brad was in complete control of that fight, dominating Tim, and then Tim caught him in round 2 and put him away. And he's also been put away by Rob Whittaker and Shabazian. But apart from the Tim fluke, Rob and Edmund, fast, explosive, young strikers, nothing like Omari really. So while he has been knocked out a few times, I'm not overly concerned about his chin in this fight. I mean, he went 5 rounds with Izzy, for example. So I think it is going to play out on the feet. Omari does slow down as well. Brad's going to have the cardio advantage. He's definitely got the athletic advantage. He's got the speed advantage. He's the more technical fighter. I do like him here. The worry is if he drops round 1 when Omari's fresh, and maybe Omari gets his respect early and makes him hesitant. I think the clearest path for Omari here is either knocking him out, which seems unlikely when you look at his record in the UFC, or winning a close decision, which would be him making Brad hesitant by catching him early. So maybe edging round 1, and then probably would need to get round 2 because he does slow down. I don't see him winning round 3 against Brad unless he has Brad badly hurt at some point in the fight and Brad never recovers, or he completely puts Brad in his shell by catching him and getting his respect. But I don't really see it, to be honest. I do like Brad here to get this victory. I think it probably does go the distance. So if you are more on the fence about picking an outright winner, I think it does go the distance, but it could be sweaty because I wouldn't be shocked by either guy finishing. Brad could catch him. As Omari slows down, he's got a good, nice, straight right hand. We have seen Omari stopped a couple of times down at welterweight. And as I said, we have seen Brad put away, but a different type of opponent. The over 2.5 is -225. I don't love it, to be honest. Even though Omari and Brad do historically go to decision, fight goes to decision is -200. You might as well just take the over if you're gonna play either one of them. There's so little difference in it. Just take the over, buy yourself the extra 2.5 minutes. Tavares wins by decision. Not all books have got props yet, but I'm seeing +140 at a couple of books, +160. I don't mind a little sprinkle on that if you just want to play a little sprinkle on the fight. Tavares decision is interesting. Even Akhmedov decision +240. Cause I think realistically, it's probably had both guys win, especially Akhmedov, probably both of them. I don't really see a finish, but at the same time, it wouldn't shock me if there was one. Moneyline, Brad. He's been bet down, Brad. He's down 5 times. We've got him at -150 now. Other books, he's between -160 and -170 generally. But I do like Brad here. I feel Omari's path to victory is pretty slim. I feel he has to get Brad's respect to make him very hesitant, basically. I think him knocking out Brad, I think, is very low percentage. This way, it's a bit higher percentage because we have seen Omari gain respect from people with his power, but he is more wild. It's not much in the reach. Brad's got like an inch on him, but I do like Brad here. I think this is a good fight for him. So the pick is going to be Brad Tavares. Next fight, we've got Jennifer Maia taking on Jessica I. So Jennifer Maia's out at like -200 here. Now, I do like her in this fight, but from a betting perspective, I can't get behind -200. Regular listeners will know my rule with lower level women's MMA. It's pretty much general rule of thumb, dog or pass. I can't be getting behind a sizable favourite in lower level women's MMA, and you could argue this isn't low level women's MMA. I mean, Maia's just coming off Maia's coming off the title shot, but for me, it's still. It's borderline. It is borderline, but still -200 for this type of fight. It's too wide for me. Now, having said that, I'm having trouble picking Jessica Rai here, and I'm not putting any money on her. I have actually had some money on her in her last 2 fights, and I feel there's been regression. She doesn't look quite the same fighter to me. I do think she is a regressing fighter, unfortunately. So while I'm not touching the -200 because it's lower level women's MMA, I'm also not betting I because, if you said to me we're going to get the Jessica I from the Vivia Rougeau fight, then I definitely have something on I, but she just hasn't looked the same to me the last couple of fights. Maia is probably getting a little bit overrated because she's coming off taking Chev 5 rounds, and she did take the second round off of her. And I'm still going to pick Maia here because even though my general rule of thumb is to pick the dog, my gut just likes Maia. I was hoping to bet Maia, but then I saw the odds and I was just like, that's too wide. I just can't do it. But I just feel Ai's regressing, which I don't like. I just haven't liked how she looked, and I think this is a good fight for Maia. I think it's probably going to play out on the feet. She likes to get inside and strike, and Jessica I is probably going to engage her in that, and I just feel Maia seems like the fresher fighter to me, so I'm going to pick her, but I'm definitely not betting her, and I can't fault anyone if you're having a bet on I, but I wouldn't go big, guys, because she just hasn't looked good to me, and I wouldn't be surprised if she just looks a step behind Maia here, but I will go with Maia. Let's have a quick look at the odds on the props. I mean, it's women's MMA, so I don't see a finish here at all. So I think if you're not betting I, then I think to look for value on Maia, you've probably got to look towards a decision prop. So let's see what it is. Maia wins by decision. I mean, it is sitting at a plus number at the moment, which I don't like laying props if they're a minus number. But plus 110, Maia to win by decision. I feel that's decent enough. I mean, the money line's minus 200, which is implied probability of 66%. If we're looking at a decision at plus 110, it's saying implied probability 47%. And, you know, I think that's decent. I think that's okay. I don't see a finish. We're in the big cage as well, remember? So everyone remember that. The big cage, more room to move around. I mean, it is women's MMA. I expect this to be quite an entertaining fight. I think they will be engaging in the pocket. It's Maia's style, but I don't see a finish. Ai's always been durable. So I think, if anything, in my opinion, you're looking at... If you don't like Ai, obviously, there's a good price on Ai's money line. If you like Ai, you'll get a good line on her decision as well, which is sitting at plus 240. I mean, that's quite crazy, really. Plus 240. I mean, it's quite tempting. Even, you know, I'm just saying I don't want to bet Ai, but I mean, looking at that decision line, plus 240, a little bit crazy. It's going to go to a decision, highly likely. You know, but does Ai have anything left? I don't know. If you've got faith in Ai, I mean, as I always say, especially if you're betting the dog, then put most of your money on the money line. But I would definitely maybe put 80% of what you're betting on the money line and 20% on Ai's decision line, plus 240. That's tough to pass up. Because it wouldn't shock me if we're going into round 3 and this is a 1-1 fight. So, but I'm going to go against my rule here. I've done this before, gone against my rule, and it's the dogs ended up winning. So I should probably pick Ai, but I don't know. She's just I just haven't liked what I've seen the last couple of fights. So I'm going to stick with my Maia pick here, but I wouldn't be landing that money line, guys. Definitely not. So first fight on the ESPN card, we've got Dricus du Plessis taking on Trevin Giles. Guys, I'm completely avoiding this fight as well. Obviously, you can get more intel on this fight via doing tape than the first fight of the card, the Hugh fight that I just completely passed on. But it's basically a pick'em line. It feels about right. I know I'm not overly high on Plessis because I remember taping him for his UFC debut against Perez. I don't think he looked good in that fight. He landed a bit of a fluky shot behind the ear in a fight he was losing. But Trevin Giles is just impossible to trust as a bettor. He has some of the very worst fight IQ I have ever seen in MMA, and that isn't a reach. I'm being serious. He has god-awful fight IQ. Watch the Gerald Meerschaert fight. Watch his last fight against Elise. I mean, he seems to be doing everything he could not to win that fight. So I have zero interest in this fight. A, because it's Trevin Giles. B, Plessis I wasn't high on, but I just can't trust Trevin Giles. I mean, he is the slight underdog, but I'd need a bit of a bigger number to even contemplate betting Trevin Giles here. But haven't picked an underdog yet. I don't want to pass on a pick here because I did park on the Akhmedov fight. So I'm going to pick as the underdog Trevin Giles. But you're a brave man or woman if you're going to put any money on Trevin Giles, because I guarantee you, if he doesn't put Plessis away quickly, you will be pulling your hair out with his fight IQ at some point in this fight. So I don't want no part of it, but I'll go with the dog. I haven't picked a dog yet. And Trevin Giles, he is a decent fighter. He is skilled. He just needs to put it all together. And Plessis, I'm not sure what his ceiling is. So I'll go with Giles here as the underdog, but I'm not risking him at that price. I'd need a better price to risk him. Next fight, we've got Ryan Hall taking on Ilia Topuria. So Topuria, I really like. I remember betting him back in Cage Warriors when he was an underdog and he won in like a minute against Brian Boulan. He's looked really good in the UFC. Let's be honest, he looks like a very, very talented kid. He's coming off a dominant win over Damon Jackson. Just walked him down, got the knockout in the first round. Before that, pretty dominant win over Yusuf Zalal. He did slow down a little bit in the fight as we got into the third round, which was the question mark with Topuria because a lot of round one victories. But the guys look good, 2 decent opponents he's beaten in pretty dominant fashion. And he's fighting Ryan Hall here. And the thing is as well, the level he's reached, he trains in Spain as well. So it shows how talented this guy is, because I know he's not getting great sparring partners over there in Spain. I think he done his last camp for the Damon Jackson fight at MMA Masters. But having a look at his Instagram, it looks to me like he's done his camp back at home here. So just shows what a talent he is. He's facing Ryan Hall. We all know Ryan Hall, very decorated grappler. Very dangerous leg locks, so definitely got to watch your legs. But, he fights very infrequently. We haven't seen him since the Elkins fight, which was basically 2 years ago. He's 36 years of age now, so there's a big age difference here. We know how that looks in terms of betting circles historically. The wider the age gap, the less the older guy wins. So, we have to factor things like that in when we're looking at things from a betting perspective. We got the win over Darren Elkins, a decent win over Darren. Pretty much dominated him, landed some low percentage stuff on the feet that hurt Darren. Darren never really kind of recovered. But he has fought infrequently. I mean, if you look at his record, since 2016, he's only fought 3 times. So in 5 years, we're looking at 3 fights. It's not regular enough. He did have a lot of fights fall out last year, or the Ricardo Lamas fell out twice, and then Dan Ige fell out. Topuria's probably being put in people's parlays, I would imagine here. He's about minus 230, I think, last time I looked. Let's have a look. Yeah, minus 250. He's creeping up towards now. So people are going to be parlaying him, I'm sure. I can't pick the dog here in Ryan Hall. I think he needs I think his only path to victory here really is landing a submission. I think Topuria, if he's smart, he would just use the Damon Jackson approach here and just walk him down and try and knock him out. I mean, it could potentially get interesting if the fight goes late and Topuria starts to slow down, but I've got to side with the youngster here. I think he's just going to be too much for Ryan Hall. I think he's going to overwhelm him. He's got to be careful. As I say, his normal plan is to get his grappling going, very strong grappler, but we did see him use his striking last time. And then even if you go back and watch his fight pre-UFC, I think it was in Brave, just one punched his opponent. I think it was against Stephen Goncalves, if I'm saying that correctly, in Brave, just one punched him. So he's clearly got power. You saw what he done to Damon Jackson. So Ryan Hall is difficult or awkward on the feet, but it's a lot of spinning stuff. You just close the gap, just put the pressure on him, close the gap. He's not going to be able to get any of that stuff off. I don't think he's going to like the pressure at all, and I don't think he's going to be able to get Topuria down. So I've got to go with Topuria on this particular fight. Have a quick look at the props quickly. So I don't like betting minus 250 in MMA unless I'm 100% confident. And I am confident here, but I'm not 100% confident. I've seen too many minus 250s lose over the years. Topuria inside the distance, plus 120. Well, that's not great. Topuria decision, plus 240, plus 270. Hall on his bike, big cage. Hall's the type of person, if you go back and watch a Gray Maynard fight, who he can survive because he'll do stuff like he'll shoot crappy takedowns and then just pull guard, he'll butt scoot. It wouldn't surprise me if we get that kind of performance out of him here, especially if he's feeling uncomfortable. So, inside the distance, plus 120, it's not really pulling at me, but the decision for Topuria perhaps is, but it is a hard fight to get a proper read on how it's going to play out. Could look a crack bet if Topuria comes out and just sparks him, because he clearly does crack. But like I said, Hall's just got that awkward style where he'll butt scoot, he'll flop to his back, he'll pull guard, he'll shoot a takedown and no chance of finishing it, and then he'll just flop to his back, try and pull guard, try and go to a half guard sweep, all sorts of stuff like that, all tricks like that here, Paul. We've seen it before from him, so it wouldn't shock me if he does that here. So I think if anything, Topuria decision would be my only temptation on that fight. but definitely, I'm definitely going with Topuria here. Let me see how old he is as well, actually. 36 for Hall, and Topuria is only 24. Yeah, it's 12-year age gap. Historically, you're looking at 10 years plus age gap. It doesn't bode well for the older man. Next, we've got Niko Price taking on Michel Pereira. Good fight, this one. I'm looking forward to this one. So Niko Price is, as we all know, just a crazy man with some crazy power. He's not the most skilled guy in the world. Let's be realistic. He's tough, and he can crack, and he can pull out some crazy finishes, but he's not the most skilled fighter in the world. I mean, skill for skill, Pereira is the more skilled fighter. But as we've seen so many times in MMA, grit, toughness carries you a long, long way in that octagon. Niko Price, I'm just seeing when we last saw him, because it feels like it's been a while, so it's getting on for nearly a year. It's the Donald Cerrone fight, which, I mean, in hindsight, when we look at Cerrone's last fight with Morono, it's, unless Cerrone's taken another dip since the Price fight, it's not. I know he would have won if it wasn't for the point deduction, but still, Cerrone did take I think it was the third round, and he hung tough for 3 rounds, so a little bit of a flag. But before that, I mean, he did give Vicente Luque a tough fight. He was very much in that fight. He's a tough man. Before that, he got the crazy upkick win over James Vick. Very, very rare do you see upkick knockouts. And he's obviously got the crazy hammer fist from the bottom win over Randy Brown. Tim Means fight where he's getting pieced up and then bang, just put him away. So, he's a dangerous guy. Pereira has made a full 360. He came in fighting absolutely crazy, and he got badly burnt against Tristan Connolly, where he lost. Gassed himself out doing his somersaults and just fighting like a complete idiot. So I think that gave him a reality check, because since then he's fought completely normal. Hasn't been throwing in somersaults, hasn't been jumping off the cage. I mean, he would have won comfortably against Diego Sanchez if he didn't get disqualified. And then since then, looked great against Salim Imadaev, completely boxed him up. And then Chaos Williams, I had a bet on Pereira there. And I mean, it was a very close fight against Williams. You can argue with that going either way. Quite surprised it was unanimous in the end. But again, he fought disciplined, which is what you want to see. And I think you will see the disciplined approach from him here. But having said that, I don't want to. I can't get behind him as -160. I can get why he's the favourite. He's the better technical guy. He's got speed. But Niko Price is a dog. So I haven't bet it. I'm passing from a betting perspective. But if I'm going to look at where the value lies, then Niko is about +140. Let's just have a quick look at the props. What is his inside the distance? +250. I mean, as I always say, if you like the underdog, you've got to take the money line predominantly. But like I said earlier, if I like Price here, I'd probably put 80% of my money on the money line, because he is the underdog at +140, and I'd save 20% of what I was going to put down for Price inside the distance at +250, because realistically, that's Harry wins the fight if he does win the fight. Pereira he will fight smart here. I know exactly how he's going to fight. He might just be a bit too technical for Price, maybe, but 15 minutes with Price is a long time to be in there. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he gets totally schooled, to be honest, by Pereira here, a bit like the Imadaev fight. That wouldn't shock me. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if Price just makes this a complete dogfight and he's in it the whole time. And just looking at when he last won a decision, obviously you've got the Cerrone fight. He would have won the decision there, which is his last fight. But before that, I mean, if you look at his whole UFC run, it's round 1, round 2, knocks out Morono, even though it turned into a no contest. Round 1, loses in round 2, wins in round 2, wins in round 2, loses round 1, wins round 1. In the UFC, he's not been a distance fighter except that Cerrone fight. So I'd probably sprinkle something on the inside the distance, because Pereira as well, if Price does start getting to him, I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to want to hang around. I think he will maybe check out mentally. So I think a little bit, if you like Price, a little bit on the KO, but put the majority of your money on the money line. There's no point getting cute on underdog prices. But yeah, I understand why Pereira's the favourite, and my head's saying Pereira's going to win this fight, but I'm going to go with my gut here and Niko Price to pull out another bizarre KO, sitting as the plus 140 underdog. So we'll go with Price, but I'm not overly confident in it. He's tough to trust with big money, especially in a fight like this, just because of his style, and he seems to rely on the extraordinary, which isn't great as a bettor, because you have to look at things from a percentage outcome. And even though he's pulled stuff out a few times now, which suggests, he's one of these guys that he's just capable of it, it's still hard to risk a lot of money on someone like that, because in terms of a technical aspect, he is outgunned here. But I'm still going to stick with Price as the underdog as my pick here. Last fight on the preliminary card, Carlos Condit, Max Griffin. Look, this is Max's fight to win if he fights intelligently, which would be looking to take this fight to the floor and grinding Carlos out. Carlos, he's coming off a couple of wins. He's been matched favourably by the UFC. They've done him a favour. They're giving him I'd say this is a step up from his last two fights, but it's still a winnable fight for Carlos, especially if Max doesn't fight smart and gives him a fight on the feet. And it's just tough to trust Max. He's sitting out at nearly minus 200. I can't trust him at that price. I was on Max in his last fight. I thought that was a very good fight for him against Song, and it didn't exactly play out how I thought, to be completely honest. I thought, again, I thought he could win on the feet, but I thought path of least resistance was definitely going for the takedown, and he actually got stuffed. And then I got to admit, when he stuffed that first takedown, I was a little bit concerned, but then he put him away shortly after. But Carlos Condit very durable on the feet. Whether he's regressed or not, he clearly has regressed to some extent, but he's still very durable. But takedown defense is still a major issue for him. So if Max fights smart, it's his fight to win. But if he decides to have a striking fight with Carlos, the odds suddenly get a lot closer. And I don't think either of them is going to put either away. I think this is going to a decision. I think the only way this finishes inside the distance is if Griffin manages to catch Carlos in a submission when Carlos is maybe trying to scramble up to his feet or something. But I do see this fight going to a decision. So I think if we're going to look for any value, we need to look at what the odds are on decision wins or the overs. So the overs minus 225. I don't love it. I don't love laying juice on props. So I've got to pass on the over. So then I think we've got to look at decision lines. So Condit wins by decision is plus 275. Griffin wins by decision. A couple of books have got plus 130, another one's got plus 155. I think that's, depending on who you like, I think that's where the value lies. But of course, if you like Carlos, take the money line mainly because he's the underdog. But if you like Max Griffin, I can't trust Max. I bet Max against Alex Morono as well, and I thought he would wrestle him, and he just struck with him for the first 2 rounds, and then he decides to wrestle in round 3. Absolutely ragdolls Morono in round 3, and it's, why didn't you do this in round 1 or 2? So I can't trust him sitting at minus 200. But I've still got to pick Max because if he wrestles, it's a clear path to victory. But from a betting perspective, if you like Max, I think you just need to look at the props, whether it's inside the distance or decision. And for me, I think decision is a very high percentage outcome. So we move to the main card next, where we have 5 fights. So first fight, very quickly, Sean O'Malley against Kris Moutinho. Kris is coming in here on very short notice. O'Malley is completely unbettable at minus 900. I think the question on this fight is whether Moutinho can survive the over, basically. Over 1.5 rounds is plus 140. The under is, it's the first time I'm looking at these odds recently, and you can't be betting under at minus 200. It's just whether you want to risk whether he can last over 1.5 rounds. I haven't done much tape. A couple of guys have told me that Moutinho is pretty durable, but he's one of these guys that gets dropped a lot. So it's not the best. It'll be a sweaty bet. Let's have a quick look at his record, because I've not even dug into his record really. So I got stopped in round 2 by Johnny Campbell. Went to round 4 with Tony Gravely. Round 1 losses a few years ago. Yeah, I'm just looking at his record. It isn't. I don't really know if I'm going to bet the over, to be completely honest. But I'm not paying -200 on under 1.5 either. Not at £135. Beat Blackshear, who's decent enough 3 years ago. Couple of wins over. Yeah, I mean, he probably does get put away. Let's be real. Probably gets put away early, but you know, big cage is something, I guess. But look, I can't fault anyone if they play the over there. +140, 1.5 rounds at £135. You know, long term, I'm pretty sure you're going to definitely be in profit betting overs at £135. But it might just be overmatched there. But yeah, the pick is O'Malley, and if you're ballsy, you'll take the over 1.5. I don't know if I've got the minerals to do it, but that will be the pick. He is O'Malley, but the money line is completely unplayable. And please, guys, don't throw him in your parlays. There's no point adding pretty much zero value to your parlay. And if he loses, or you double, if he loses and busts it, you'll just hate yourself. Just don't do it. So, next fight on the card, we have Irene Aldana taking on Yana Kunitskaya. Tough fight to get a read on this one. I've done some tape on it. I went into it thinking I'm going to like Irene, but then I just came away and I'm just not sure how this fight's going to play out. Yana is a decent enough striker. I mean, at distance, you have to give the advantage to Irene, but Yana's very strong in the clinch. She's going to be looking to clinch. She's very good at controlling on the fence. You know, where's Irene at as well, coming off that fight with Holly Holm? I mean, she was very one-sided. She got completely dominated in that fight. And the fight's sitting at a pick-em line now. I mean, that feels accurate to me. It's a very hard fight to call. Well, Irene's a slight favourite. Yana's sitting at +100. I mean, Yana's coming off a fortunate win, in my opinion, against Ketlin Vieira. She was literally controlled for the whole of the third round, got reversal in the last 20 seconds and landed one elbow that cut Ketlin, and the judges gave her the round because of the cut, which I don't agree with, because it's very hard to score damage in a fight, in my opinion, because people mark and cut a lot easier than others. It's one of them things. Some people will go through a fight and take a load of shots and they won't mark up. It just depends on your skin, your ability to absorb damage, and when you're rewarding someone around. And look, I understand if you're beaten up over 3 rounds and your face looks a complete mess, but this was just like one elbow that just cut her, and personally don't agree with the round going to her just based off that one elbow, but it is what it is. But back to this fight, yeah, I think the line's pretty accurate. I think, in my opinion, you need to look to the props again to see if there's any value on this fight. I see it going 3 rounds. I don't see a finish. I mean, obviously it happens now and again in women's MMA, but this fight's going to a decision, highly likely. So I think you need to look at either by decision. Aldana by decision is sitting at +160, +175. Kunitskaya decision is pretty much the same. So I can't go big on this fight. I've got no lean on it. I just couldn't get a great read from it. But if I was going to go with either, it would be a small sprinkle, and I would take one of them by decision. I think that's the way to play the fight. I'm probably going to save it for live bet myself. As I've said, I offer a premium live betting service for members, so I would just live bet the fight. I'll pick Yana just because she's the underdog, but that's purely the only reason I'm picking her. I don't think there's any value on the underdog line. It's only +100. And Irene, you know, she does have a tendency to make things tough for herself. So I'll go with Yana. I think it's going to be close. personally think the best option is live betting. If you're one of these people that has to bet fights, I think betting either one of them by decision is probably the prudent choice, because you're getting some value there at plus 160, plus 175 area, because it's highly likely going to a decision. Next fight on the card, we have Tuivasa taking on Greg Hardy. Another one tough to call. So I said at the start, I didn't really have a view in my mind as to how many underdogs, etc. I feel we're going to win here, but I think this is quite a tricky card for betting, to be completely honest. And the Tuivasa Greg Hardy fight, another one, tricky one to bet. Tuivasa is just hard to trust. I'm not 100% sure about his dedication to his craft. I'd like to think it's improved. He's got his second crack at the UFC here, so you've got to think he's taking it serious. He's a slight favourite here, minus 135, minus 140 territory. Greg plus 110, plus 115. I'm not sure how big a puncher Hardy. Look, I don't mean that by he's not a heavy hitter. He obviously is. Would not like to be hit by him, and he's knocked out all but one of his opponents. But he's kind of, you can kind of see that he's happy to kind of sit back as well and try and win a technical fight. And I just don't know if he's going to be able to put Ty away. Ground is obviously a weakness for him. We saw that in his last fight against Topuria, but this is going to play out on the feet. It's going to be a stand-up fight. And I'm kind of leaning towards Ty here. I do think he's the better striker. I mean, Hardy is a big guy. Cuts weight to make 265. Great athlete. But he's still very new to fighting. And while he's made great strides, and you wouldn't think it from watching him, I just wonder if Ty's just going to be a little bit too much for him. But I'm not liking the money line. I'm not overly confident. It's heavyweight as well. One punch can change things. I know I said Hardy. I don't think he's as big as a hitter as people think or his record indicates, but he's still a ginormous human being. Again, I'm just going to have a quick look at the props here. Over 1.5. I do think this goes over. I definitely do feel this goes over, but so do the bettors, because we're looking at a minus 175 line, which isn't overly appealing at heavyweight. 63% of the time it goes over. I think it's probably more like 70%, to be honest, so there might be a little bit of value there, but it's just, I don't love betting overs heavyweight MMA. Every shot that's thrown, you're thinking, oh, it's going to be over. Hardy wins by a decision, plus 350. See, this is what I mean by where I think Hardy's power's a little bit overrated. That seems a bit wide to me. Plus 350. Tuivasa by decision is plus 450. See, look, the books think there's going to be a finish here, but it's quite funny when you look at it, because the over 1.5 is, as I've said, minus 175, and the chances of a fight finishing past the first round, past the halfway mark of the second round, it diminishes greatly. So I'm surprised these decision lines are this wide, to be completely honest. So I would probably look at having a punt on one of these decision lines, perhaps, because Tuivasa plus 450 and Greg plus 350 just seems a little bit wide to me. I'm just seeing if Tuivasa's won a decision. I'm sure he has. I'm sure he won a decision against Arlovski. So a quick look. I mean, he's fought Struve, who retired, Hunsucker, he went the distance with Ivanov and Arlovski. Greg, I know he's coming off being finished by Topuria, but that was on the mat. I'm standing up. I don't think he's been finished. Just double check. Volkov decision and the illegal knee against Crown. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of value on decision line for both of them there, depending on who you like. What his fight goes to decision. It's in the big cage as well. So if fight goes to decision, is only down at like plus 150, plus 130. So Hardy or Tuivasa, I personally think if if you're going to bet on this fight, if you haven't got a strong lean, I think either one of them winning by decision is of interest. So I'm going to go away and have a think about that, because I think I might have a sprinkle on it. And I mean, Tuivasa, extra 100 points plus 450 on the decision line is kind of tempting. So I'm going to have a think about that one. Co-main event. In terms of a pick, I'll go with Tuivasa. I just think he might be a little bit too skilled on the feet for Greg. And Greg can slow down a little bit as well in fights. So I'll go with Ty. Co-main event, we've got Wonderboy taking on Gilbert Burns. Good fight, this one. Wonderboy's one of the best strikers we've seen in mixed martial arts. I think it's going to be too much for Gilbert Burns on the feet. There's no doubt in my mind there. Gilbert, his stand-up has improved. He's developed that Dutch kickboxing style. He's got good calf kicks, but Wonderboy can fight out of either stance. But he is susceptible to low kicks. He's not great at checking them. If you go and watch his fight with Jorge Masvidal was landing low kicks on him. So he's got to watch the calf kick there. But as I say, he can fight comfortably out of either stance. You saw that in the Luque fight. Had a bit of a difficult first round, switched stance from round 2 onwards, and just absolutely pieced Luque up. So Gilbert, you've got to think he's going to want to take this to the floor. Now this is the question mark area, because Wonderboy's takedown defence hasn't been tested for a long time, and I mean, if we're completely honest, it's never really been overly tested. But I went back and had a little look at what occurred. There was a couple of takedown attempts by Masvidal. They seemed more half-hearted though. He grabbed a single. Those defended pretty easily. I went back and watched the Hendricks fight. Hendricks did put his legs out, but he based, and he was never able to put him on the mat. He was able to scramble out and get back to his feet pretty quickly. So, Chris Weidman, I think, is his brother-in-law. So obviously he's not training with him for this camp, but you've got to think he's put in a lot of work with the wrestling with Weidman down the years. So Gilbert, he's not a great takedown artist. His takedowns basically are, he will go for a double in open space, or if he gets you on the fence, he looks for the outside reap. If he does get Wonderboy down, the round is probably over though. It's just going to be about Wonderboy surviving. So that is the danger here. But on the feet, I just think he's going to be too much for him. And Gilbert's coming off a pretty bad KO loss. Is that going to affect his confidence? How's he going to approach his fight with Wonderboy? You've got to think he's got to go after Wonderboy, especially if he wants to takedowns. But he's such a good counter striker. I wouldn't be surprised if Gilbert gets put away here. It's Wonderboy. Why he's not like a huge one-punch knockout artist. He has great timing, and we've seen how durable Luque is. And I mean, he came the closest to putting Luque away. Had Luque badly hurt, and I do think Burns is a little bit low-key chinny. We've seen him knocked out by Dan Hooker, who obviously is coming off the knockout loss to Usman. I like Wonderboy here. As I say, obviously, if he does end up on the mat, we are making some assumptions. It's been a long time since we've seen his takedown defence, but from what I've seen, it looks decent enough. And like I say, he's always trained with Chris Weidman, so I've got to imagine that he's always worked on his wrestling and his takedown defence. And I just think it's going to be too much for Gilbert here. I mean, on the feet, look, he's got to be careful. Gilbert does have a good right hand, but Gilbert does. I know he didn't slow against Woodley, but yeah, he was just in full control in that fight. In other fights, he seems to slow a little bit. I mean, this is only 3 rounds. We're in the big cage as well, which favours Wonderboy. So I like Wonderboy here. I've got to go with Wonderboy. It's been bet down. He was at like minus 140 area. He's down at minus 175. I wouldn't be surprised if he closes around the minus 200 mark. Inside the distance, plus 250 area. I don't think that's bad either. I'd really think he's going to put Burns away. Just got a feeling Burns is going to walk onto something. So